So we bowl on a short pattern today, a 36-foot short pattern today. Very, very challenging. All right. Tomorrow, a 46-foot long pattern. The finals, you get one lane of each. So on their left lane, it's going to be the long pattern. On the right lane, it's going to be a short pattern. So if you make the top three and you're getting to that step ladder, it's going to be an adventure. All right. So pay close attention to what he talks about on these patterns today. With that said, Coach Squires.
Thank you. As Brandon said, I am Coach Joe Squires. I'm the assistant coach for Hawkeye Community College. I've been a part of the college bowling scene for about 12 years now. Spent some time coaching at Waldorf University and then Wartburg College, and now here I'm at Hawkeye. So just wanted to give you some insight on bowling on sports patterns. First off, raise your hand if you have, on one hand, counted the number of times that you bowled on sports shots. So 5 or less. Yeah? That's good. Take it in. This is an experience. This is something new, something different. You might not even know what necessarily sports patterns are. We're going to kind of follow the same suit as Andy Dirks did, where we have a PowerPoint presentation up in there. So if you want to kind of swivel kind of back and forth, there's some good things there. I'm going to try to go off of this. I was hoping that the TV would be a little bit bigger because I have some animations, but we'll just roll with it, okay? So here we are. So what are they? You know, sports patterns are patterns that of oil set on the lane to really promote athleticism and kind of give a challenge to bowlers. They're primarily put down in tournaments. They're primarily put down in like sweepers, things like that, different style of tournaments that bowlers can go to and compete in, but you primarily see them used in competition setting. PBA, for example, sports shots, those tournament bowlers, if we put all of those PBA bowlers on a house shot, what do you think would happen? It'd be a strike fest, wouldn't it? It'd come down to one guy maybe leaving a trip 4, maybe leaving a 9-pin, maybe leaving an 8-pin, something like that. But that's not what we want for a sport. We want the challenge, we want the athleticism, we want that high caliber athlete to be able to do well because they are bowling on some of the toughest patterns in the world. They're different than bowling on a house shot, where a house shot is designed to do kind of get the ball back to the pocket. Sports shots are way different. They have different lengths. They have different amount of oil on the lanes. They change kind of where the oil is depending on which pattern you put down. And they really kind of promote bowlers' skill, accuracy, and precision, and versatility.
I do. To put it in layman's terms, what Joe just said is I always tell everybody, okay, if you're on a house shot or an easier condition, that amount of oil in the middle is high and the amount of oil on the outside is low. So if you miss right, the ball hooks back. If you miss in, the ball sets. Whereas in tougher conditions, that ratio flattens out. It can be flat or it can be less flat. But that means a ball that you threw right, you miss by 2 arrows on a house shot might hook back. If you miss that on one of these, you're probably going in the gutter. So not all sport conditions are hard. Now don't let that get you. Some sport conditions, some good bowlers will tell you that played easier than my local house shot. But more often than not, your sport shots are going to challenge you a lot more, just like Joe said.
So we have to compare something with what we know. So if you've gone out to your local bowling alley, not during a sports certified tournament, or just gone and bowled out for fun during a league, you'd primarily be bowling on house shots. Like Eric said, those are designed where the outside of the lane closest to the gutter is pretty much no oil. and the ball hits that spot, you see it hit it and go right to the pocket. You set that ball inside, you see the ball just go like 50 feet, break a little bit, go right to the pocket. There's more miss room where even if you hit that second arrow, one shot, the next shot you might hit, first arrow, the ball comes back, hits the pocket. The next one you might hit 15, or the third arrow, ball skids, goes right to the pocket. So way more miss room on those recreation patterns. More oil in the middle, as Eric touched on, and less towards the outside. And you can primarily play most of the same area depending kind of house to house. You see some characteristics of the house kind of come into play, but most of the time you're going to be playing kind of in the track area right around second arrow for a break point for kind of most house shots. Now, characteristics of that sport or tournament patterns. We already heard that it was flatter, more oil on the outside. That makes it so there's less miss room closer to the gutter. They vary in different aspects where the length is different. So if you're looking out on the lane, you have about those tracer boards. You have oil sometimes that goes past those tracer boards, and sometimes have oil that goes about 10 feet past the arrows. So the length really changes. And these sports shots require way more consistency. And they display more of the lane topography. If I were to ask you, are all bowling lanes completely 100% flat, what would you say? No? That's right. No, they are not flat. And when we're talking about flat, I'm talking about, thousandths of an inch differences. So minute differences that you can't see with your naked eye. But that comes into play and really, really makes a difference on what the bowling ball is doing. And when we bowl on sports shots, coaches like Eric and myself have trained ourselves to be able to see those characteristics come to play by reading the bowling ball. So they can be tougher to score on. Just like Eric said, it's about, you might match up and you might shoot 250 and be like, wow, that was an easy pattern, easy shot compared to my house shot. Next lane you go down, you don't quite match up so well, you might shoot 180. So it really kind of varies and kind of changes how you match up to it. So now, this presentation, just kind of taking all of the coach's knowledge that from what we have here, we could probably talk on this subject for like 6 hours, easy. But we're trying to condense it down to make it something that you guys can kind of swallow, kind of take easily. So when we talk about how to shoot on sports patterns, I want you to just know that there is a lot that goes into it. So much that goes into it.
I've had tournaments as a coach where for 2 days straight, I got every move right, I got all the transition right, I had the right people in the lineup, we were playing the right part of the lane, we had the right balls in our hand, and maybe the next tournament the next weekend, I leave after Sunday and I'm like, I could have bowled there for another month and not figured that pattern out at all. So it doesn't always matter what you know as much as what you see, and you're never, as a bowler or as a coach, you're never going to get it all right. So, like he said, we could talk on this for 6 hours, and at the end of the 6 hours, we could go out there and bowl and not figure that pair of lanes out for another 6 hours. So that's one of the things about the sport of bowling.
So one of the things that goes heavily into bowling on sports shots are shot making techniques and being adaptable. So being consistent, being able to hit your target will dominate kind of more so than a lot of things. As we get into more oil play, as we get into different lane surfaces, different bowling balls, rev rate, power, and speed can at one point trump consistency, but consistency and power and revs can equal out fairly well, especially at the college scene. And then you have to also learn to play the pattern the way the pattern wants to be played. We're going to talk about it today. We're going to be on a 35-foot short pattern. If you're trying to play that up fourth arrow starting off, that's not going to be necessarily the right move. So we'll talk about what moves we want to do. But just know that when you're talking about playing the pattern or the lane the way it wants to be played, you might have to be uncomfortable. You might have to get outside of your comfort zone. Like, oh, my ball is starting to hook too much. Well, did you try speeding up? No, I don't know if I'm good at that. Try it. Get outside your comfort zone. Do something that you may not be accustomed to, because the more experience that you get, the better off you will be, and you'll just kind of see one of these, like, your scores may not be kind of jumping at first when you try new things, but eventually they'll start evening out, and you'll start seeing your plateaus kind of going away and start elevating. But it's taking those risks and getting outside your comfort zone that really you'll see an accelerated growth. If you just stay in and only throw like you would on a house shot, what do you think is the chances of you learning anything bowling on sports shots? Pretty minimal, pretty low. You might match up here and there, but you need to take yourself outside your comfort zone. All right. Now we're going to kind of talk about getting into arsenal selection, or I guess, Eric, did you have anything to? Thank you. All right. So we have arsenal selection, matching up the right bowling ball, the right surface, the right layouts, the right type of ball, the right, do you want to use urethane? Do you want to use reactive? There's so many things out there. It may be overwhelming. I mean, like I said, I've been doing this for 12 years. I'm still learning about layouts. I'm still learning about ball motion. I'm still learning about urethane, reactive, when to use each, what comes into play. Because when you're out here trying to solve this puzzle of sports shots, you just pull anything and everything out of the bag. And it's kind of like throwing the kitchen sink at it sometimes, just to get your bowlers to kind of buy in and trust what you're saying. Because we're a team, we're trying to work at this together. So you have your bowling balls. Anyone know how many brands of bowling balls there are? Not just the Brunswicks, the Storms, the Swags, the Motives, not just those, but like each individual company. Because they each produce their own different bowling balls, right? And each one of them has about a rotation that they come out with bowling balls. I haven't looked up to see how many bowling balls came out already this year, but it can be overwhelming. And if as a parent or as a bowler you're just starting to look into some of this and trying to get it figured out, it can be, you can look at some of these balls and go, wow, why are we doing that? Like, what is the point of all these different bowling balls? And I can tell you, if you look at the screen, it can just start popping in your head. There's so many bowling balls. And then you got the Collegiate King right there. One of the Collegiate Kings. The Purple Hammer. But when you're looking at these at the arsenal, what I will tell you that you should do to help yourselves really well, and it's an easy thing to do, talk with your pro shops. Talk with people that drill your bowling equipment about layouts, about arsenals, about trying to get at least, if you're kind of going in and you're starting off, I would say try to get at least 3 bowling balls that do different things based upon what your pro shop owner says, with different layouts, different types. Because all these different bowling balls that you see, they're designed to do one thing. They're designed to create different shapes on the lane to maximize how they go through the pins. That's all they do. They maximize, some will start hooking at your feet, like the Purple Hammer. Some will start hooking about 5 feet away from the pins. So we really need to, it can be overwhelming when you're trying to look at some of these and be like, oh man, do I use this magic gem, or do I use this this ocean viad? What am I doing? Like what's going on? So talk with your pro shop owners, have them take a look, because they are knowledgeable. They work with this stuff every day.
So to kind of dumb that down a little bit for those of you that are fairly new, so when you go to a tournament and it's on a sport shot, a lot of times you won't know what that sport shot is till you get there. So you kind of want to have a bag that covers all the bases. So like when we go to a college tournament, every baller is going to have a big ball, a ball with a big engine that hooks when they're slick. Then we're going to have another ball that, as they start to dry out, doesn't hook as much, but can still get some good shape. And we're going to have a pearl probably that'll get through the fronts when they dry out and will still shape a little on the back. Then we're going to have what we call a brick, like a high road pearl. When they're torched and you've been bowling on them for 6 hours, a ball we can get deep with and we'll get through the fronts and we'll shape on the back. And then we're probably going to have a urethane in there as well, so that when you're on a shorter or a medium pattern on the fresh, the ball motion is super sharp off the spot. That urethane with surface, of course, will tame that down. So you kind of want to have all your bases covered when you go to tournaments like that.
Now we're talking about equipment preparation. So you might have heard Coach Littig say different surfaces. One of the things we do as college coaches, we teach our bowlers how to put different grit pads, different Abralon pads they're called. Have you seen those red discs? Anyone? Those red discs that you might see, those are sanding pads. They have, I was going to point to Kyle. He seems a little bit preoccupied. I was going to say CTD pads. So they sponsor bowling equipment and stuff, sanding pads specifically. We want to make sure that we are using those surface pads to kind of change the difference, because when you're thinking about changing surface, it's like if you have a pattern that has a lot of volume, which we'll talk about here. You would think, like, if you're think about the kind of the surface of the bowling ball like a tire. If you want summer bald tires kind of going onto a slick snow road, what would your car do? Skid everywhere. Fishtail, not be able to control anything, go too far, not be able to brake. So when we're talking about, we want that big ball that's going to have a lot of surface, that's going to be able to slow it down and get to the pocket and eat through that oil or that slick spot and go towards that. So we use the surface pads to be able to manage that. We clean our equipment regularly, because if how much of the ball motion is actually based on surface? It's okay if you don't know this. It's about 75 to 85% is actually based on the surface of your bowling ball. You can make minor tweaks with layouts, you can make minor tweaks with different things, but the primary indicator of bowling ball motion is the surface of the bowling ball. So we want to clean that, we want to take care of those bowling balls, and I can tell you, if you go through a college season and you never clean your bowling ball once, your ball is going to die super quick, and you're going to have to look to get another one if you want to still be able to compete. We've both seen it. You want to make sure that you have good fit. Your thumbs, everything is good. When we go into the bowling alley, one of the things I talk about is making sure they drink water, so their thumbs fit, they're not swelling, they're not. They test their fit. They do all of that before they even start in the lanes. They take their hands. Rush, where did I see Rush? You walk somewhere? Okay. I was just going to tell you, anyone have their fingers taped? I know Rush did, that's why I saw him. So you make sure everything is taped beforehand, because if you are rushing to kind of get through tape, your head's not in the right mindset. So now one of the next pieces is adjusting to the lane conditions and lane transitions. So we have to be able to, one of the things that we want to do as players is be able to train your eyes to stop seeing how, when we think of how strong a bowling ball is, we think of, oh man, that ball got from the right gutter and went all the way to the left, the 7-pin. That would be considered a strong bowling ball to some. That is, when we, as college coaches, talk about strong equipment, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about how far the bowling ball goes down the lane before it starts hooking. Okay? So the earlier the ball starts hooking, the stronger the ball. So we want to make sure that we start reading that ball motion front to back. Because if your bowling ball is going to get down there at 35 feet and you're not in the right spot, or you're using a ball with too much surface, you're going to see some weird things happening. So we really try to pay attention to that front to back motion and really watch when that ball starts hooking, and then watch the shape that it creates off that spot. Then we know that the lane topography can change. So when we're bowling in tournaments and some leagues, how many lanes do you bowl on in one game? Is it just one lane? It's two, right? You primarily bowl on 2 lanes. How many of you, if you bowled on sports patterns before, have come back to your parent after throwing a good shot and thinking like, oh man, that ball should have aced, and it went through the nose? It happens. And then you go back on the lane on the other side, and then you throw the same shot, and it strikes. It's right through the pocket. It goes through. Don't tell yourself that what you're seeing, like you might tell yourself that you threw a bad shot. Understand that these lanes, even from the left to right lane, can and most likely are going to be different. We talked about how much a lane has hole, meaning how far the ball will go down before it starts to hook. If you miss in a little bit, will the ball skid through, or will it start hooking a little bit? These lanes are going to be different. So if you're trying to make adjustments on this lane and then you go over and throw the same shot on that lane, you might get a different result. So you have to start going back and forth and really paying attention to both lanes. So you try to know kind of where the friction is on the lane. You talk about this a fair amount with your bowlers? Knowing where the friction is? Yep. You have to know where the friction is at all times, meaning where, again, we're going to say this a lot, where does the ball start to want to hook? Where is the friction? If the friction is the wrong spot, even if you're hitting pocket, if your ball is starting up too early and you're hitting pocket and you're leaving 10 pins, we know that as college coaches that we have to make an adjustment, because we know that there could be another team that's going to jump ahead of us because they're going to be carrying their pins. So even if you're picking up some of those 10 pins, we might make a chance, we might take a chance to make a move and try to knock out that 10 pin, based on what the bowling ball is doing front to back. So we have variability, we can change speed. How many of you, raise your show of hands, are good at changing speed, either going faster or going slower? Yep. All right. So that is one thing as a collegiate player. If you can change your speed going faster by 1 to 2 miles an hour than your normal speed, or slowing down 1 to 2 miles per hour on from your normal speed, that will change your ball motion by a ton. You will get, when we talk about we only have 5 bowling balls that we can use, you can change your arsenal by how you change your speed.
Yeah, you don't get different ball reactions just by grabbing another ball out of the bag. If you only have 4 balls or 5 balls, like Joe said, you've got to make certain balls do different things. You can change your speed, you can change your release, you can change your trajectory, where you're spotting on the lane. I always say the best magicians command the highest prices. Well, the same way in bowling. The best bowlers have the most tricks in their bag, the most versatility. They can change all these things. All your bowlers on the national tour are brilliant at this kind of stuff. It's not just go back and grab another ball.
Yep, exactly. Because if you bowl at junior gold and you have 5 different bowling balls that you can only use across 4 different patterns, and you don't have some of those tricks, it's going to make the day. You can have one pattern that might not be your favorite. The other thing that you can change is how much axis rotation you can get on the ball. Meaning, if you see your ball like that, is that the axis rotation is how much left to right motion or right to left motion that you can get out of a bowling ball. I can trick a bowling ball and make it spin more, and you're going to see it jump off the spot and go left, compared to if I'm rolling it and getting my hand behind it, you're going to see the ball want to go more forward more. So even those little tricks can make a 5-ball arsenal go from seem like you have 5 balls to 10 balls to 15 balls, because you can do some of those tricks. And then you really want to be able to kind of watch where your bowling ball is hooking once again. And if your bowling ball is doing something different than you want, then it's time to start transitioning. So now we're going to talk about some practice drills that we could see really that will help you get there. First and foremost, you need to find a coach. I know, how many of you guys watch YouTube? Watch YouTube with Brad and Kyle, the house bowling, I know Andrew Anderson just had some on there, Darren Tang. They have all these bowling balls, or these bowling PBA players that are willing to share their knowledge. The one thing that they do not do for you is give you feedback. They give you knowledge. You can go out and try that knowledge, and I encourage you to do that. But they are not regularly giving you feedback on knowledge. If you try to go out there and you're trying to throw, trying to get more revs on the ball, and you're telling myself, oh, it just doesn't feel right, you're most likely right. You need to find yourself a coach that can give you the feedback, the instant shot feedback. Seek out sports shot tournaments like this one. Sports shot tournaments that can give you lots of experience. The more experience you have, the more tools in your bag that you can try, the more things that you can see match up. Play different parts of the lane. Play different different parts of the lane. I heard it really well said. I can't remember if it was Darren Tang that said, go to an easy house pattern and play the most difficult part of the lane. Don't play where you're going to score easy. Trick the ball to play hard, make yourself uncomfortable, and do something that gets you out of that to accelerate your learning. And then learn from other people. Learn how to change speed. Watch other people. Watch if someone's going to bowl well, and you're seeing where they're playing, what they're doing. You may not have something that is close to, but you can trick and you can try to do something to get yourself in the right area. So a little video here. Talking about practice. Well, Allen Iverson talking about practice. You can't come into these expecting to do well if you have not experienced it outside of some of these tournaments. You have to create yourself an environment where you can bowl on sports shots to really get yourself the experience. Real quick, mental game preparation. Have a growth mindset. What does that mean? It means that you're going to, we all have our expectations that we're going to do really amazing, awesome things, and we're going to be bowling out of superstars. When that doesn't happen, does that mean that we failed? No. It means that we need to come back, we need to figure out that puzzle, we need to find more tricks, we need to do something else. Have an action plan for how you're going to get better from that spot. It's okay to feel disappointment and feel like, oh, I didn't know that this was going to be this hard. But it's what you do from there.
Yeah, so today or tomorrow, if you're going into game 5 and you're minus 200 after 4, you should still have the same mindset game 5 as you did in game 1. I know that's easy for me to stand here and say. It's a lot harder to do. I've been there. But that's how you learn. I've had a lot of tournaments in my life I bowled where I didn't bowl very well. But maybe the last game, maybe I try a different release or different ball or different surface or different target, and I worked on something, and all of a sudden I shoot a decent game, which is still not going to get me in the money, but maybe the next month or 6 months down the road, I remember back to that, something I tried in a tournament that overall I didn't bowl very well, but all of a sudden that day, now I put it to use, and all of a sudden now I'm on the leaderboard. So never give up. That mental game, no matter what we talk about this weekend, mental game is the most important thing in bowling, regardless of how good your physical skills are.
And I'll kind of nod my hat to Eric there. I consider him one of the best mental game coaches in collegiate bowling. The way that he gets his players to buy in all the way from game 1 to game 6 is just incredible. So when he says, same mindset, he creates that for his players, and he does that really well. You have to trust yourself. What you bring to the table is going to be good enough to shoot how you're going to shoot. You have to trust yourself to be able to make that you're going to bring your best game, the best way that you're going to possibly shoot you have it. You brought it here today, you're going to do it. And then I want you to also learn to trust people that are trying to help you. If you have a coach at home, if you have someone there that you trust with your physical game, trust them. If someone's trying to give you some advice, some coaching advice, some physical game advice, you don't have to take it right there, right then. You can go back to a trusted advisor and talk with them about it. And then one of the biggest things I can tell you that I work with my players on is trying to visualize yourself being successful. Take some time to imagine yourself, visualize what it would look like for you to be bowling successfully on these patterns. Where is your ball going to go? The more detail that you can put in that visualization, you trick your mind into actually making it real. When they say those that believe, those who can and those who can't are both actually right, it means there's a lot of truth in that, because they visualize, and there's power in visualization. You trick your mind can't tell the difference in a lot of situations, whether you're visualizing and still activating the same muscles or actually actively throwing the same shot. How many repetitions does it make to make one physical game change? Anyone know? About 1,500 repetitions. Positive, awesome, amazing repetitions. Now I say that because if you're like, wow, I don't want to make any physical game changes ever again. That's not the point. The point is you can actually have the same idea by going through and visualizing and doing the motion by going through the imagination process. We just have a quick video from Dean Hinnitz, who is he is the bowling psychologist. I'm going to try to turn it up as loud as I can, see if we can listen to him, because he talks a lot about visualization and the power of it.
When you're training and when you're competing, you can only do the thing that you can see yourself doing successfully. And so like if you can see it, you can be it, or if you can see it, you can do it. But if you can't see it, it's very low likelihood that it's going to happen. So one is like a shot picture out of the lane. Can I see the way my ball is supposed to behave? Can I see where it's going to go? If you don't have an idea, whether it's seeing it or feeling it, of direction or where your break point is, if you don't have a feeling for this is what it is on the lane, then you're just throwing shots. You're not really invested. You'd be like a paintbrush, and just you're not really seeing where my line is. Like you gotta be that painter that says, drawing a house, here's where the edge goes. And you have like the edges shorter than your mind, but they don't have to be skinny, just they have to be patch, or they have to be something like this is where it goes. But you also want to have something that you see.
Right, so he was talking about visualizing as being a painter. If you're going up here and you're not seeing yourself do something, you're like a painter who's trying to paint a house without, or painting a painting without knowing what you're painting. You're just up there, you're throwing brush strokes. But if you say to yourself, I want to paint the best house that I can paint, and you go up there and you're making painting a house, it may not be perfect. You might notice some different edges, but you had an idea in mind. Right, so we'll just go from common mistakes to avoid. Over-reliance on hook, meaning that you have too much axis rotation, not enough control, your ball is spinning too much, and it gets too violent off the end of the pattern. It's really hard to control a hockey stick motion on the lane, and it's really hard to hit the pocket. So try to get a little bit more roll, try to get a little bit more behind the ball to help yourself as much as possible.
To simplify that, and this is not true in every case because there's nothing true in every case in our sport, but more often than not, bowlers that I coach, I mentioned I don't want to see that V pattern. I want to see more of a C pattern, so that opens up that break point so you can make a little mistake one direction or the other.
Ignoring lane breakdown signs, missing transition, and then so when we talk about transition, the oil on the lane changes every time you throw a shot. Every time you throw a shot, someone else throws a shot on that lane, the lane changes. So you need to be actively reading, watching up what other people are doing, and then watching the lane break down. Then trying to match up mismatching equipment to the lane. So if you're trying to throw a pearl, for example, a pearl asymmetric bowling ball, like an all-star on the on today's pattern, on fresh, that might be kind of tough. So we need to talk about matching up. Then using too much surface. So if you take your big bowling ball and you put 180 grit on there and you chalk it up, you may not get that ball for very long in play, right? So those are common things to avoid. So we're going to just talk about, now we're going to transition and go into talking about the patterns today. Starting with, we kind of want to read what the bowling patterns on the lane sheets, what do we actually need to pay attention to? So the big thing that we want to pay attention to is the distance. The distance on the lane, so we have and I'll show the graphs for the pattern today. The pattern we're bowling on today is 35 feet. That dictates where you can start on the lane for a break point. So if you're aiming at using the rule of 31, and the rule of 31 doesn't always come into play, and the other part of the rule of 31 is that is not where you play at the arrows. That is where you play at the break point.
Does everybody know what the rule of 31 is? Raise your hand if you don't. Most people do. Okay. This does not apply 100% of the time. But usually to steer you in the right direction, if today's pattern is 35 or 36 feet, let's say it's 36, you take 31 off that, it's 5. Typically your break point will be around 5. But that's just to start the day. And again, that's just a theory. That doesn't apply all the time. Tomorrow, 46-foot pattern, you'd think your break point should be around 15. But again, I've seen long patterns where the gutter's in play, so it doesn't apply 100% of the time, but that's kind of the rule of 31.
So that applies primarily to where you're trying to start on the pattern, on a fresh pattern. And then, as we said, the pattern changes as you go kind of from game to game. The ratio then kind of gives you an idea, a general idea about how difficult the pattern can be. And I said potentially difficulty because it's not the case necessarily, because you can bowl on, I know there are some houses where you could bowl on red square, and red square could be easier than a lot of other houses. So it's just a general idea of how potentially difficult the pattern can be. The idea of the volume can give you a starting point for what equipment can be in play. The higher the volume, the more opportunity for some bigger bowling balls to come out and some a little bit more surface. Now, it also comes into play with what the topography is like. If we're bowling here at Cadillac, where some of the lane surfaces are a little bit older, you may not need as much friction. And then we have the reverse oil. That can give you an indication also of how long the pattern might hold up before transitions. There's kind of some ratio where if you have, about half of the ratio of the reverse oil is half of the forward oil, that means that the pattern might hold up a little bit longer than some patterns that are just forward oil. So every time and I guess I can back up, every time the ball machine goes up, since we have a Kegel oil machine, the oil pattern will go, the oiler will go down the lane putting oil on and back and putting oil on. So it puts oil on twice. So we have boardwalk here. We would be starting on 35 minus 31 would put us right around 4 board. Right from there.
It is 1 o'clock, so our announcements for the tournament will start at 1:30. Practice is going to start at 1:45. If you need to leave to go grab lunch, great. We also have food here. A lot of it's prepared or easy prepare. Kids, if you want to stay down here, great. Parents, do whatever you need to do. This is kind of up to each of you individually, so we understand. They said they're going to wrap it up in about 5 minutes, so if you have that time, that would be perfect.
All right, so we're going to talk about now specifically between the patterns.
Since we're going to wrap this up in about 5 minutes. So if you look at a lane graph, sometimes that's going to give you a great idea on where to start. But in college bowling, a lot of tournaments, we don't know what we're on. Postseason, you never know what patterns you're on. You have to make all adjustments based on ball motion. So, I'm old school. When I bowled competitively, we didn't have graphs or anything. But you can put the same pattern down in 10 different bowling alleys and it can play 10 different ways. So just because you look at a graph and you know what that says and I'm supposed to be here, your eyes have to be the ultimate test.
So I'll talk up here since it's so I can see the numbers a little bit clearer. The oil pattern distance for today is 36 feet. Now, if we take the rule of 31 to give us a guide, are we playing in the middle of the lane or closer to the outside of the lane? Outside of the lane, about board 4. So remember, that's a break point. So you may be trying to hit board 4 and still trying to hit 15 at the arrows. That might be a little extreme, but that's just the rule of guide for the break point. So you can change where you're aiming at the arrows to try to get the ball to that spot until you hit the pocket. And then we have 25 mils. So that, how many games have we bowled?
5.
5. Okay, so that pattern's going to transition 25 mils with today's technology in bowling balls and surfaces. And depending on how many bowlers you have and rev rates, they may not last. You may see yourself get way uncomfortable and may force yourself to make a jump. Jump to the inside part of the lane. Don't be afraid to do that. If you start seeing people that are way to the left and your ball is overhooking every time, kind of try to jump in and see where they're at. Okay?
In about 30 years, we've come from the point where we used to oil the lanes with a spray can to the point where we're at now when we've got $50,000 lane machines that can dictate the amount of oil and the length of oil on each one of the 39 boards. So technology has affected bowling just like it's affected every other sport.
And then real quick, I just wanted to touch on bowling balls. So something that would be really controllable for the back end, urethane, lower differential bowling balls like the IQ tours, things like that you know are more controllable. Something that's not going to jackknife off the end of the pattern, because if you throw it and it hooks at 35 feet,
about 40 feet, the ball is going to go left towards the 7 pin. You're using too strong a bowling ball. So something really controllable, something with a little bit of surface that can get that ball to slow down and kind of try to roll. Now we have the pattern for tomorrow, 46 feet. That would put your break point at about board 15 down lane. Now this, there's still low volume. Now if you use a bowling ball with a lot of surface, for example, you're gonna, we run into this a fair amount. If you have a bowling ball that has a lot of surface, you're gonna be eating up the oil in the front part of the lane, and it's going to make the ball want to not go through the pins correctly. Something that I like to see, even on standing on fresh, I like to see something that might give you a little bit more down lane motion, like a high differential, like I said, the All-Star, something that is, if you know what asymmetric bowling balls are, something that has that mass bias marker with 3 little spots, you can use something like your big, quick hooking ball and try to get it over 15 at down lane and try to have it come back a little bit. Or as always, we know urethane is going to most likely be in play.
Brandon just told me that in each of the 15-minute practice sessions today and tomorrow, I figured this was the case, I wanted to make sure, you can make surface adjustments right up until the first ball is thrown of competition. So, I always advise, don't go crazy with surface adjustments until you see some equipment go down the lane. Because like Joe said earlier, if you chalk something up and all of a sudden you throw 2 shots and that ball might be out of commission for the day. So I would just advise to wait until you're practicing to make that yeah, you can put something light on a ball that you're pretty sure you're going to throw, but don't go crazy on surface adjustments. The whole point of, speaking for Brandon and Cadillac and his team, I think the whole point of this weekend was to give everybody exposure to college coaches and to have a fun, great, competitive environment today and tomorrow on 2 different lane patterns. So the last thing I want to say is just, this is a big congratulations to everybody for coming out this weekend. Do the best you can, have fun. First prize is not $1 million, so have fun. And any other questions for any of us? You're probably tired of listening to us, aren't you? All right, I'm done. Brandon, you got anything? Joe?
I'm done.
All right, I guess we're going to start practice at 1:45, right, Brandon? Okay.